Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Stephen Baldwin, and I'm on the line tonight with the preaching machine.
Good evening, everyone. I'm LaKeisa Jackson. So glad that you all are able to join in with us tonight.
Amen. Amen. I'm excited about this conversation and to be on with you, my sister. What we're talking about tonight, actually, for these last couple of weeks I think, have been tremendous. I think they've been very powerful, just for not only for the church but for our families individually as well as collectively. We've been talking about relationships, and tonight we're really focusing in on critical relationships. Just to kind of open it up a little bit, and just to kind of have this conversation get started off. And so, in terms of kind of like this particular topic, how has it been for you? How have you seen it been a blessing for you, or how has it been impactful for you?
It's really been one of these, as they say, in your face type of reflections and devotionals, because it's true. We often say what's important to us, but then when we take the time to really think about it and map out how much time we're able to give to those things that we're saying is important, the two don't always match up. And so to find that balance, to be honest, Steve, I've had to do some recalibration in my life
Yeah.
to really try to get that balance again.
Yeah, I'm with you, sis. I think that for me, the whole issue of relationship, there is the way that kind of we have, it's been mapped out for us according to our culture, according to society, and then there's God's way of how he views relationships. And it's so easy just to kind of go with the way that culture has kind of presented it. And one of the things that you mentioned with regards to like in your face was, on Monday, the devotionals where it says that the truth often is that the most important relationships are the ones that we take for granted and even neglect. And, I was like, oh man, can we start a Monday off? Can a brother start a Monday off with a little something, man, that like a sock. I mean, I don't know how that was for you, but I was like, oh.
It was very impactful, pretty much similar, the reaction, but it gave me a chance to make a decision. Okay, am I going to continue my week living like what I just read about, or will I really take some time to see what I can do to actually change it? So for me, it was the actual part of taking my day, the time that I really have free time. And so for me, that meant less screen time, less phone time. I know a lot of times, just as a pastime, we have different things on our phones or our iPads. And as we're trying to pass the time away, just waiting for a few minutes, we may be checking emails and things of that sort. So my screen time has had to decrease on purpose. If I was going to use screen time throughout the day, I had to do it on my computer to check the work emails and so forth. But throughout the day, on my lunch break, I was intentional about making sure that I prayed and talked to the Lord. And then I even carved out some time to make sure that I could connect with some family members. I don't know about you, Steve, but you have a big family too. Yeah, yes. You
do. Right.
So with just the, immediate family, it's a lot of moving parts, especially when you start adding their spouses and nieces and nephews, and you want to be connected to everyone in the family. You don't want anyone to feel like that there's a disconnect. So I thought it was very helpful on Friday when Bishop gave the recommendation of, having a set time that you connect with family. And maybe this week is this set of family members. The other week is another set of family members. And so I've adopted that model, and it's been quite helpful.
Wow, I love your approach in terms of your intentionality, and I think that when the day gets kicked off, um, I usually try to justify my screen time. I'm being honest. I try to, it's kind of like, oh, I'm just take a second to kind of look at what's happening.
Yeah.
And so we justify some things. But I love your approach of the intentionality of your approach to, again, prioritizing the critical nature of the relationships that we have to foster if we want them great. If we want them to be, if we value them the way that we say that we do, we have to prioritize them. Yeah. And so kind of looking at Monday's scriptures, three, for me, the scriptures that we have 16, Psalm 16:8 and Psalm 139, verses 23 to 24 and 27, Psalm 27:4. Three things kind of stand out for me in terms of how David really kind of valued relationships, critical relationships. And in Psalm 16:8, it is about priority for him, where he says, I have set the Lord always before me. So there's an intentionality of prioritizing, his time with God. The second, in Psalms 139, verses 23 to 24, he's transparent to the degree of he is asking God to remove any distractions, sins, or obstacles from, his view or his awe of God. And then Psalms 27 and verse 4 and 27 and 4, it really talks about the quality time in his presence with focus. And that last one is probably my biggest challenge, because I don't know about you, but when I'm like praying or and trying to be intentional about it, my mind can be like all over the place. I'm thinking about the next thing I gotta get done. I'm sorry, I know. So how do you remove those distractions when you're trying to focus your time, quality time with the Lord?
Well, for me, something that I've noticed, if I ever want to stop my mind from just like thinking all these thoughts, I begin to open my mouth and start speaking. And so sometimes I end up praying out loud, maybe
Okay.
not super loud, but I end up praying out loud so that what I'm hearing is what I'm focusing on. And that's something that has helped me in the past. I know sometimes I may play some music to kind of, as they say, bring my mind in and usher me into the presence. That's something that has helped me also, because it can be a challenge, but we have to continue to push. And sometimes it's a combination of things, because your day varies from day to day. Some days you may have a light day, but those heavy days, I put that music on and I'm, oh Lord, talking out loud to them. I have them both going, because we have to be determined. The enemy is determined.
Yeah.
He is not pulling out the stops when it comes to trying to distract us. He is on his job and he is doing it well. And so we have to be just as adamant about being on our job to continue to develop and strengthen our relationship with God and our families. It's a lot easier for me to prioritize my relationship with God, but the real struggle comes for me when I start prioritizing my relationships with family and friends, because I just love everybody. I just want to talk to everybody.
Okay.
But it doesn't always, time doesn't permit that. So I think as I'm praying and I'm asking God for wisdom and guidance, it's easier to connect with those that reach back, family and friends that reach back on a regular basis. Let's say you call them, you miss their call, they call you back, as opposed to the ones that you have to kind of track down a little bit. And I think with the ones that, for me, that what I've noticed, the ones that I may have to track down a little bit, those may be the ones that really need that connection. They may be trying to retreat and just kind of, deal with things on their own, but that's a trick of the enemy to isolate and conquer. So we have to definitely be in relationship with God to understand when that is happening with that individual or when they just need a moment alone.
Okay, okay, that's good. I mean, what you just said there kind of is probably one, well, is actually the next question that I was going to ask you with regards to, the critical relationships may shift, from time to time from what is needed for a particular season for an individual. And you've identified for us that, the ones who will probably need us the most are the ones that are difficult to connect with. Probably the ones that are needing us the most. And so to go out of your way to make those connections is I think a really powerful thing that you highlighted for us for identifying critical relationships and how to respond to those critical relationships. Wow, that's so good. This kind of leads us into really kind of day two, really on Tuesday, and really lifting up the critical relationships of family. And we just want to touch a little bit on this. We've got really kind of 2 days on this, Tuesday and Wednesday, so it's it's really important. Probably, if we're honest with ourselves, when you say it would be probably the biggest area of our neglect that we have.
Yes, and I like the way they specified it out for those that single focus on your parents. Not your boo, your parents, and those that are married to focus on their spouse. And as we become adults, a lot of times it's easier to kind of drift away from that closeness that we've had with our parents as we were growing up, because we become more self-sufficient. We start, lives of our own. But it's so critical to stay connected because your parents are your foundation. And, as they get older, when I first started having children and started with my family, I was calling mom, apologizing for things that I did as a kid. It's like, it's coming back on me. But when we realize what they have to offer, they have so much experience, they have so much wealth of knowledge, they have wisdom that we can glean from and build upon. And then when we're able to interact with them and share things with them, we keep them connected and up to date with what's happening and what's changing in the world. So then there's that interdependence. We can go to our parents for that support, their wisdom, and they can come to us to be hip, to get this technology savvy thing going and to be connected. My mom has a Facebook page. You hear me? Facebook page. So yes, that's very important.
Yeah, my mom has a Facebook page. She does email, and she's like 84 years old. So
wow.
Hey, you can do this. But I also too, I want to thank you so much for speaking directly to the singles community, in this space, because I think that oftentimes when we talk about relationships, one of the things I think that the church sometimes does is that we always focus it just simply on the marriage and marital relationships, and but to be able to speak, I think, from your heart with regards to how the singles community can engage in meaningful, critical relationships is very, very powerful. So thank you for speaking to that particular area. And so how would you say, just to kind of as a follow-up, how can married couples stay engaged with the single community? Because I think there's sometimes a disconnect, and there is the us versus them kind of feel sometimes. So how do we repair that relationship and make it so that, again, that it's critical as well, that we're engaging with one another? How would you say we could do that?
That's been a very tricky type of thing that I've noticed over through, down through the years. I once was married and I've been divorced for quite some time. But even then, it was always a challenge to get that balance. I think if the married couples are open with their love for each other and aren't afraid to show it um,
Mm.
to each other. Singles, we're praying and hoping that God sends us someone. But if we can still see that it's still happening, that there are couples that are living and having a godly marriage that love, and as a lot of people say, and still like each other after all this time, that gives us hope. And
Yeah.
then, as you know, those that are looking for that type of relationship, if they're open to us not prying in your personal business, but if we're able to just ask from time to time, how did you, keep communication going? Just general questions to give us nuggets of things that we can keep in our tool belt, keep in our arsenal. Because,
Mm.
back they used to have hope chests. I may be telling my age. They used to keep hope chests, but we can have those words of wisdom, those communication and those relationship tools in our in our arsenal, so when the Lord does open up that door for us,
Yeah.
we're not scrambling and starting from ground zero.
Mm.
And we build those relationships, we'll have someone that we can go to, maybe do a double date sometime, or
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
something like that, where we can um, glean from their wisdom and experience, and it can give us guidance and hope. We know that we have the Bible, but a
Yeah.
lot of times it's just being able to touch that person that has been where you're trying to go, that
Mhm.
makes the relationship stronger and makes it more valued.
Yeah. I agree with everything that you said. I would add on to your point, to be transparent about, about marital relationships as well. Not just to, it's not just kind of like looking at the negative part, but also to being transparent about those challenging parts, right? And not give the impression that somehow or another in this club called marriage that, our relationship, uh, the way that we're engaging in relationship is, always the best or the most healthy. That we have challenges, we have to go back and do some reassessment in terms of how we're treating one another, and be open and transparent with the singles community and everybody else with, this is relationship. Relationship is work. And if it's critical enough, you'll put the time in, you'll put the effort in to make it work, and so that's the only thing I would, again, add on to your great answer that you provided for us on that particular question. So you work in the hospital environment, and you guys got all these codes, these cool codes like code red and code blue and code orange and code polka dot. I don't know what all that stuff is. But I do know that when I've heard it in the hospital, I've just seen, the medical staff just start scrambling, they just, everybody starts grabbing stuff and heading off in one direction or whatever. So, when it comes down to our relationships, in our relationship with God and with others, you know, the question I have is, how can we identify some of these emergency alerts that we should have for ourselves as it relates to our relationship with God and our relationship with others?
Communication is such a key identifier. There's a variety of ways that you can communicate. It can be verbal, your body language, physical touch, um, those ways of communicating, that's what keep a relationship going.
Mhm.
If you take periodic assessments to
Mm.
see how has your communication been, that can, I mean, quality communication, not just, hey, how you doing? All right, talk to you later. That can gauge the health of a relationship,
Mhm.
how frequent you talk, and when you talk, is the conversations rich and meaningful. So
Mm.
even with spending time with God, when we spend time with God, our prayer time, we talk to Him, are we open and honest with Him? Are we putting before Him those things that are most pressing towards us? Are we being honest with what we need help with? When
Mm.
we talk to individuals, are we just talking to check off a box that we checked in with them? Or are we taking the time to really see how they are doing, to see, if there's something that we can do to help? Or if you talked to them previously, are you following up with them
Yeah.
to see, their progress of something that you all shared before? So
Yeah.
communication is, I think, a great gauge of the health of the relationship.
I love that point because, I agree wholeheartedly. I think on the other side of it also as well is, for me, I think it's how well am I listening? Um, I think that for me, when I assess the quality of my relationship with God, it's how much am I listening to
Mhm.
Him? How much am I, quieting myself, even asking for things, and really just toning into how well am I listening. And I do the same thing with
Mhm.
my relationship with Linda. I ask myself, how much am I listening to her, listening to what she's thinking and what she's feeling. Those two elements
Yeah.
of listening are critical. What is the person thinking and what is the person feeling? Those things
Steve,
communicate hard. Those things
those
communicate.
those things are very, very important. So much so that our church offers classes on those
Mhm.
to help us, the speaking the truth in love and listening for heaven's sake. Um, those are two classes, one that helps you communicate effectively in love, and one that helps you to actively listen, so that you can, be responsive to um, to the person that you're talking to. Because a lot of times, when we talk to people, we're not listening to try to comprehend what they're saying. We
Mhm.
may be listening to give a response.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so good. That's so good. Wow, time has just flown by, and I want to thank you so much for joining me in this conversation tonight, and thank all of you for joining us on this conversation tonight. I just want to remind all of you that on Friday at 6 o'clock, join in on this continued conversation with our pastor, Bishop Smith, where we want you to bring your questions, bring your comments. The last Zoom session that we had with Bishop was just phenomenal. And we want everybody to join and share this conversation today. Share, the information about joining us on Friday with Zoom with Bishop. It's going to be a great conversation. Again, my sister, thank you so much for being on here with me today.
Thank you for
Any
having me, Steve.
It's been fun, and we look forward to seeing all of you on Zoom on Friday. God bless you, and see you next time.
God bless.